Has there been a person who changed the course of your life, but not in a good way? Someone that left you with enough scar tissue that never encountering each other again would be just fine? That was the case for AJ Daulerio and Jenn Sterger. Jenn and AJ ran in the same circles for a time in the late aughts. Both worked in sports media. And Jenn told AJ about Brett Favre, the very famous, very powerful quarterback, sending her repeated messages and photos and voicemails propositioning her. But she asked AJ not to do a story, and at the very least, not one that named her. AJ did the story anyway, and he paid a source to get access to the messages Jenn said were from Favre. He posted those too, along with Jenn's name and picture. That changed Jenn's life forever, making her and her motives and her looks the target of sports fans' commentary. It's been 15 years since that story broke, but she can tell you, a viral internet story has this way of freezing you in a difficult moment in your life, and then it does it over and over again with each new search. And then, years later, a stray puppy needed a home. And in a wild twist, that puppy brought AJ and Jenn back in contact in a way neither of them would have done on their own. AJ Daulerio was featured on the show last fall when we shared an episode of PJ Vogt's wonderful podcast search engine called When Do You Know It's Time to Stop Drinking? AJ talked about his heavy drug use and drinking during the time that he was running some of the internet's most attention-grabbing news sites, the sports site Deadspin, and Gawker, the tabloidy news site that relished a takedown of a celebrity or captain of industry. AJ eventually had his own takedown after Gawker published a stolen video of Hulk Hogan having sex. Hogan sued Gawker and AJ and won at a jury trial. Gawker declared bankruptcy and settled. That was years ago. AJ has since gotten sober, and he talks openly now about the competitive incentives and lack of ethical scruples that led him to do things he wishes now he hadn't. But that wasn't something he had expressed directly to sources he'd burned, like Jenn. And then this dog made them cross paths again. And now this week, they both talked to me together on this episode.
There's just this violation that comes from having pieces of your life that were so private and so damaging to you put out there by someone other than yourself. If I've learned anything, it's that once your story gets told by someone else, it's no longer your story.
This is Death, Sex, and Money. The show from Slate about the things we think about a lot and need to talk about more. I'm Anna Sale. I'm excited to tell you that Death, Sex, and Money is back at Tribeca Audio in New York City. We're doing a live show on June 11th at 8:30 p.m., and I want to personally invite you to come join us and be a part of the live recording. I will be interviewing award-winning actor Allison Williams from Get Out, Girls, that weird doll horror movie Megan. We're going to talk about her life, her career. It's going to be fun. Whether you are in the city on the East Coast or have just been looking for an excuse to visit New York City in June, we hope to see you there. The show is Wednesday, June 11th at 8:30 p.m. Get your tickets now at tribecafilm.com/DSM. See you then. Hello, Death, Sex, and Money listeners. Before we start the show, I want to let you know about something coming up a little later in the episode. It's about Brooklinen. Summer is right around the corner, and it's the perfect time to refresh your space and create a home that fits your lifestyle. Whether you want to upgrade your bedding for warmer nights, add a pop of color to your bathroom, or layer in lightweight textures throughout your space, Brooklinen can help you feel totally prepared for the change in season and ready for your summer nights. More on that later in the the show. Shop award winners and fan faves in-store or online at brooklinen.com. That's BROOKLINEN.com. Get 15% off your first order today. Netflix just released a new documentary about NFL legendary quarterback Brett Favre, who was once celebrated, and still sort of is, even after a series of high-profile scandals. The documentary is called Untold: The Fall of Favre. And early on, it introduces us to Jenn Sterger. In 2005, she was a college student at Florida State and was discovered by chance when a TV camera panned across her and a group of friends at a football game. She was wearing a bikini top and a cowboy hat. As she was on screen, announcer Brent Musburger took note on the national broadcast.
1,500 red-blooded Americans just decided to apply to Florida State.
The internet sports site Deadspin also noticed Jenn and made her an instant internet celebrity.
When my pictures came out from the football game, I remember Deadspin got a hold of them through the message boards and stuff like that. And so I ended up, I think in some kind of article, or article's a loose term for it. I ended up on their website,
This is you in the cowgirl hat watching a football game.
Exactly.
At Florida
State. From there, I think Deadspin was actually what got me noticed by Maxim and Playboy.
So Deadspin had kind of helped you establish a profile on the internet.
Exactly. Deadspin helped kind of launch me in a way.
From there, Jenn appeared in Playboy and Maxim. She wrote a column for Sports Illustrated called Confessions of a Cowgirl and contributed to ABC's college basketball coverage. Meanwhile, Deadspin was also launching the career of AJ Daulerio, who started as a writer and became Deadspin's editor by 2008. AJ had sharp elbows and a knack for beating out competition for eyeballs on the internet. Did you think of yourself as a journalist? Is that the word you used for what you did?
No, not at all. Yeah, I never liked that. There was a lot. I know I did journalism at some point, right? But I was kind of like cartwheeling through it, is like how I like to describe it. Because I knew that there were some restrictions that I wanted to not adhere to, right? I didn't want 3 sources. I wanted to pay for stories. I wanted to do things that were kind of a little more editorialized and subjective. I wanted to kind of, incorporate a lot more voice and personality into the stories that I did, right? So I didn't really think of myself as a journalist, no.
What's a word that you might have fit better? Provocateur?
I mean, I was going to say that, but I was just, man, do I sound like an asshole if I say provocateur? And I kind of do. But I think that I loved spectacle, right? I really loved having either good or bad attention. It didn't matter to me. As long as people were talking about something that I had done, I considered that a win.
By 2008, Jenn Sterger was hired as a sideline reporter for the New York Jets. She only worked for the team for 1 year, the same year Brett Favre came to play for the Jets. Jenn also contributed to Deadspin, and she and AJ would occasionally email and talk on the phone.
We just kind of had a running dialogue, and then I think it was Super Bowl of 2010. He and I connected to talk about Super Bowl parties. And then there was like some back and forth about whether or not AJ's guys could get into the Super Bowl parties. And he's like, but you can, Jenn. He's like, can you tell me what's happening inside these Super Bowl parties? And I was like, yeah, sure, I guess.
So wait, I want to understand. The Super Bowl party thing was like, he's kind of cultivating you as a source. Like you are able to watch what's going on. And
she was one of my moles and eyes and ears. Yeah.
Okay.
So the Super Bowl was supposed to be a big ad push for people at Gawker. So what I would do is put out like a bounty, right, on stuff that I wanted from Super Bowl week. And one of the bounties that I had was, I believe, I was using dong shots as like part of a bounty, and not expecting anyone to respond to it.
Dong shots meaning photos of penises.
That would be it. Yes.
Okay. All right. Okay, so you're gonna be his eyes and ears at the Super Bowl party. You have this like messaging correspondence, and then like, how did it happen that you were sending him emails and you told him, you alluded to what had happened between you and Brett Favre?
I think it was actually over a phone
was over the phone.
conversation.
That was over
I
the
think we
phone.
just got to talking about how dong shots had gotten so prevalent, I think is how the conversation started. It was just like, can you believe these guys that just like that they think that that's the move? You know what I mean? And AJ was kind of annoyed by it. He was just like, I can't believe I have to cover, like I have to like deal with this, cover this, you know what I mean? And I was like, man, this is nothing compared to what happened to me at the Jets.
As she recounts in the new Netflix documentary, Jenn attracted the attention of Brett Favre, who was by then already an NFL legend from his time at the Green Bay Packers in the late 90s, when he won the Super Bowl and was the NFL's most valuable player for 3 years in a row.
He was a god, you know, he was very protected. And I was a 25-year-old independent contractor.
And Jenn says she started getting messages from him, asking if she'd like to get together, even though Brett Favre was married and she never gave him her number. There were voicemails, and she says in the Netflix doc, a photo sent of his penis.
I was watching playoff baseball, and I remember my phone going off. And I opened up the picture. The picture came through, and the email address that it came with was B. Favre.
Jenn told some people at the time, at the end of that season at the Jets, her contract wasn't renewed. A few years later, Jenn and AJ Daulerio were talking, and she told him what had happened. Even played him a voicemail of what sounded a lot like Favre's voice, asking Jenn to come to his hotel room. She thought of it as two sports media people trading stories, at first.
I remember getting off that call and being like, Jenn, I think you just overshared. And I was like, nah, it's fine. Like, it's an off-the-record conversation. You know, it was kind of how I viewed it. But I do remember getting off that call being like, oh, no. But that happened to me so often. It still does. And I try to monitor it a little bit more now that I know it's like a tendency of mine. It's a way of connection for me, is storytelling, and that's something that I've really come to understand about myself in the last decade through going through all the therapy I have.
So it's this like cycle. What I hear you saying is like you're sharing to try to connect, and then the other side of that cycle is the like regret, maybe shame. Oh God, I hope this doesn't turn out badly. That I did
1,000%.
Well, you're telling yourself it's going to be okay. That was off the record. Like, AJ, when you hear this information from Jenn, what do you start thinking about?
Well, I remember getting off the phone because you played me one of the voicemails too, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and I think that was really the part that I was shocked by. Was that I was just like, oh, this wasn't. He was actively pursuing her in a way that made her uncomfortable because of her job, right? This wasn't like a normal sort of athletes behaving badly sort of situation. She was really in a tough spot here. And that was the thing where it rose to the level of something that was bigger than I think that I was used to. But also understanding full well that this is the most popular and famous football player on the planet, and who occupies a lot of space in just like the sports media world. And then I went and I told my deputy editor what I just heard from her, and I was just like, this could be huge.
And I look back at like, why did you play him the voicemails, Jenn? And I think what it came down to was AJ was not the first person I had told this to. Like, professionally, that I had told this to. I told people that this was going on when it happened.
Yeah.
And I had some people that just did not believe me.
Uh-huh.
And I don't think there's a worse thing for a victim than feeling not believed or like, this is bullshit, this isn't real, you know? And I felt like AJ was the first person that heard that and was like, oh, this is a big deal and this was messed up what happened to you. I truly do believe he viewed it that way.
Uh-huh. It's a big story because it's so messed up what happened to you.
I didn't view it as a story. I just viewed
Yeah.
it as like, this is the first person that's taken my claims seriously.
Uh-huh.
You know, I was taking it seriously and I was asking other people because I had a lot of sources at that point and lots of people I knew that were in the industry. And people knew this about Brett Favre, but they were also like, look, I cover, if he's doing something on the field, that's a story. Off the field, like, who cares? Has it risen to the level of kind of, is it illegal? Then maybe there's something there that we can talk about. But the risk of alienating the most popular football player on the planet for most of these guys was too great, right? I mean, I understand that. I mean, if they lose access to Brett Favre or piss off somebody in Brett Favre's camp, then that could cost them their job in some way, right?
Mm-hmm. So you're describing, just to sort of see what I'm hearing, like, Jenn, you're saying somebody's taking this seriously and somebody in it, and that it matters. And
I just felt seen.
Yeah.
I felt seen for the first time because before then I had sat with this for all of, like the fall of 2008, all of 2009, and had been in therapy, had lost my job with the Jets, obviously, had gone back to waitressing. Like, I had lost everything, and had to reinvent myself. Like, I went through a major transformation in 2009 where, like, I took out my breast implants. I fully gave myself a makeover and was like, I have to do this because I'm the one that drew this attention to myself, because so many people just, they didn't care,
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, I felt seen for the first time. Someone saying, hey, what happened to you was wrong.
AJ did not post the information immediately. But then, a few months later, in the summer of 2010, Brett Favre was back dominating sports headlines.
If you go back, Brett Favre was kind of holding sports media hostage every summer when he would decide whether or not he was going to retire. And that summer was the same thing. It became, the major news story was, will he retire? Who will he play for? And I was in a bad mood that day when I saw that this was actually the news story that everyone was talking about Brett Favre. And I was basically like, fuck this. I'm going to put everyone on blast. Thinking mostly that I was putting, honestly, like, the sports journalists on blast. Like, basically, you guys know about this. I believe this person. And I think to add credibility, I used the email from her telling me not to use it, right? Thinking that actually gave it a little more credibility and weight to it. And thinking that someone would come forward and say just like, yeah, this is 100% true. And then the story would naturally evolve from there. And one of the first calls I got was someone from a major sports network, we'll say, who was just like, yeah, everybody knows about this, but we can't do this. Like, it's Brett Favre basically is the biggest story around. We're not burning Brett Favre. The end. And I think that just made me more determined that if I did get any sort of response of someone who had proof, that I was going to go with it. And I told her that too. And, at that point she had stopped talking to me and understood. Right. Yeah.
Is that right, Jenn?
Yeah. I mean, I was actually at a photo shoot for the promo shots and commercials for my new sports show I had coming up when AJ called me and was like, hey, why don't you come into the office and we can talk about this? And I just remember being like, oh, this is bad. And I ran it past my management team at the time, and they were like, absolutely not. You will not be going into the Gawker office. Are you insane? Just ignore it. And so I don't think I responded to AJ much, but I do think at one point I sent an email that was like, hey man, I can't be involved in this. And like if there was any way that like you guys could out him for being the person he is without me being involved, that would be one thing. But I can't like I can't be attached to this, you know, just because I finally got my life back on track. I have my own show coming up. I was back on the air, and this just wasn't going to end well for me.
Jenn asked AJ not to run the story. She said she wouldn't cooperate as a source. But AJ started looking for other ways to get access to the voicemails and explicit photos. AJ found someone who had them and would sell them to Deadspin.
They were in Florida, and they said they'd fly up for 10 grand. And I would pay for their flight, and they'd give me all that stuff for 10 grand. And I went to my bosses at the time at Gawker, and like I said, I mean, we were encouraged to pay for stories if they did have them. And how it would work, it was almost like a book advance, right? If I got paid $10,000, and then whatever sort of conversion rate for page views, like you would have to earn out, or else you would not get your page view bonus for however long until afterwards. So as long as you earned out and were successful with it, obviously it could be transformative for a site. And we only had like 3 people that were full-time at Deadspin at that time.
So you thought this is at least a $10,000 story for me.
I was willing to bet that it was if it had worked out the way that I thought it would. Yeah.
So it is a $10,000 story and then some when it's published. It's everywhere. Your face is everywhere talking about the story, including on television interviews, and you're being asked about how you got the story. And people, you admit openly that you paid for the story.
Yeah.
And at one point, you say to a television, this is in the documentary, you say to a television interviewer, if there are 2 scumbags at the end of this, it's myself and Brett Favre.
Well, I said to a couple people at the end of this, if there are, 2 scumbags out of this situation, it's myself and Brett Favre.
Do you remember saying that?
Oh, yeah, I do. Yeah. And there was an interesting part about that when I did ask to have the $10,000 to pay this. Part of the stipulation was, okay, well, you're going to promote this and you're going to go on all the television shows and all the interview shows. And I did it all.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, it wasn't, I didn't like it.
When you were putting the piece together that was going to go up on the internet.
Yeah.
Among the photos that are included is a picture of Jenn.
Yeah.
On the top of the article, right?
Sure.
Her body, what she looks like, her name.
Mm-hmm.
Did that give you pause?
No, it didn't. Because I think the one we used was basically the New York Jets press photo that was circulating around with it, I think. But it was, obviously, when you run a picture of Jenn on the site, it does give a whole different shape to this story, right? How do I say this respectfully? Right?
It's a sexy photo. She's in like a Jets shirt, but it's like a sexy photo. So it's a photo of Brett Favre's bad behavior with a sexy woman's picture attached to it.
But it's also because she had been such a personality and a presence. It's not like she wasn't well known, too, right? People knew who she was. So I didn't think it was anything that I thought about too heavily. It was just like, oh, well, this is how she presents herself. This is what the Jets are putting out there. So why isn't this the photo that we would use? It didn't matter if it was like a sexy photo as long as she was wearing Jet stuff, right? For me.
Uh-huh. Do you want to say anything to that, Jenn?
Which part? It's interesting because I look back on so much of this, and I got emotional when AJ was talking, and it has nothing to do with what AJ's saying, and it more has to do with being able to put myself back in that time period so easily. And just how violating of an experience it is. And I know that sounds crazy as a woman who made her living, or who got discovered because of how she looked, you know? Like, I wasn't on television and people weren't like, look how big her brains are. You know what I mean? Like, it wasn't, that's not why I got discovered. But you have to remember, at the time, this was in the mid-2000s, a certain aesthetic was rewarded by society.
Yeah, that was so your currency. Yeah.
Yes. And I played the game. I was the girl that like looked like a pinup but could talk about football. I think today kids call that a pick-me, but like
Really?
Yeah. But truly, knowing what I know now about myself, that was all a mask. And I think that was the hardest part for me, is knowing that it was a mask. And I always just, when I would talk about it to people back in the day, I would describe the way I presented in public as kind of like my wrestling gimmick, for lack of a better word. You know, I was like, this is a character. This is a caricature of myself. And to that point, there felt like there was a level of insulation between who Jenn was as a person and who I presented to the public. So when people made fun of me, I would just be like, or they would talk badly about me, I was like, they don't know me. And suddenly with this story, those lines became very blurred, even for myself. Because it's one thing to be in your mid-20s and figuring out who you are. It's another to have the internet screaming at you what they think you are. And I think the internet told me who I was before I had a chance to figure that out for myself. And they got it wrong. They didn't know who I was. You know, it was just like they looked at pictures and that's all I was. And to be fair to AJ, like, he didn't know me as a human being. He knew me as a picture and as a girl on the internet. And that's what everybody knew me as.
Coming up, after 8 years of no contact, Jenn and AJ run into each other again when AJ and his wife are moved by an ad for a stray puppy at a crowded shelter.
I heard the gasp, right? And she shows me the name of the rescue person is Jenn Sterger, and we both do some Googling, basically just like, is this the person that I had burned years ago? And it turned out that it was, and I said, well, I guess this dog will die, because there's no way that this person's going to give me this dog.
This week's episode is one version of a now familiar story. How the internet and its reach changed faster than our ability to honestly grapple with the ethics of using it and contain its harms. Now, as someone who uses the internet a lot, including making this show that you get by finding us on there, thank you for clicking on us, I know technology enables many beautiful, life-expanding encounters, interactions, and relationships. But big tech and the way we use it definitely also has its costs. Costs that sometimes take years to reveal themselves. Right now, how all of us use tech is rapidly changing again, as AI rebuilds the basic utilities of nearly every big tech platform. And this week in your Slate Plus feed, I talked to Ed Zitron, a technology critic and writer, about all this change and how everyday tech like Google and Instagram seem to just be getting worse.
These services were always free and ad-supported, but because these companies must always grow revenue without fail, otherwise the street will beat them to death, they will do anything to make it so that you have enough of a service that you'll stay on it, but it doesn't have to work as well. Look at Facebook, look at Instagram, look at how many times you as a user get interrupted. It's constant. Why are things not in chronological order? Because if you were in chronological order, you'd catch up. You go, oh, I've seen all the things I need to. I can leave. No. You couldn't possibly do that. Adam Mosseri needs more money. Mark Zuckerberg needs more money. It just can't work, I'm afraid.
I learned a lot from talking to Ed. And our conversation isn't just about tech. We also get into modern business management and what the incentives of these giant companies are. Now, our conversation definitely stoked my feelings of dread about the online world. But he did temper that by telling me what platforms he thinks are better for users, like Reddit. And he gave me some real concrete tips on how to be a vigilant consumer and clicker. You can listen to my conversation with Ed Zitron if you are a member of Slate Plus. We make these special drops for Slate Plus members, and it's where we get to think out loud and learn from smart people in ways that just don't fit in regular episodes. I love making them. If you haven't already, sign up to join Slate Plus by going to slate.com/DSM Plus, or you can subscribe directly through the Death, Sex, and Money show page on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. And reminder, a Slate Plus membership also comes with ad-free listening to our show and all of Slate's podcasts, so get on that. On our episode next week, I talked to writer and director Celine Song. Her first film, Past Lives, came out in 2023, and it was a semi-autobiographical story about a love triangle. Her new film is also about love and the dating market. Dakota Johnson plays a matchmaker for rich clients in New York City who hears uncomfortably honest assessments about the deal breakers and requirements that people have as they look for a partner. And it's based on real-life experience. Celine worked for a matchmaking company when she was a struggling playwright in her early 20s.
What I learned is that every client would walk in describing the person they want to be with in terms of height, weight, job, salary, what kind of lifestyle, what kind of place they own, how they own, if they own,
as
rent.
If they're a consumer.
Yes,
yes.
As if
This
they're
is
an
what
object.
I want to.
Exactly.
Yes.
Yeah, they're a consumer of a product.
This podcast is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Fiscally responsible, financial geniuses, monetary magicians. These are things people say about drivers who switch their car insurance to Progressive and save hundreds. Because Progressive offers discounts for paying in full, owning a home, and more. Plus, you can count on their great customer service to help you when you need it, so your dollar goes a long way. Visit Progressive.com to see if you could save on car insurance. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and affiliates. Potential savings will vary. Not available in all states or situations. This episode is brought to you by the ACLU. The ACLU believes the Trump administration is pushing a dangerous and sweeping attempt to control our bodies, our families, and our lives. President Trump has signed far-reaching executive orders that target transgender people, their rights, and their health care. But the ACLU and their partners are in court fighting back. Meanwhile, the ACLU is also at the Supreme Court fighting for the future of transgender people's freedom and bodily autonomy for all. U.S. versus Scrumeti centers on a Tennessee law restricting healthcare access for trans youth. Tennessee has asked the Supreme Court to expand the ruling that overturned Roe versus Wade to allow it. The ACLU believes the fights for abortion and trans healthcare are connected. You can learn more at aclu.org/autonomy. Today's episode is sponsored by NerdWallet's Smart Money Podcast. Making financial decisions shouldn't feel like trying to pick a place to eat with friends. Too many choices and everyone has an opinion on what's worth it. One person says invest in crypto. Another says go all in on real estate. Meanwhile, you're just trying to figure out if your credit card's annual fee will ever pay off. That's where the nerds come in. NerdWallet's finance journalists do the research so you don't have to, breaking down the fine print, cutting through misinformation, and giving you real fact-based insights so you can make smart financial moves without the group chat chaos. NerdWallet's Smart Money Podcast can help you get smarter about using home equity without over-leveraging yourself, and when refinancing actually saves you money and when it doesn't. Want to know if dividend stocks or growth stocks make more sense for you? Listen to the nerds. They also help decipher the real difference between ETFs and mutual funds without the jargon. Make your next financial move with confidence. Follow NerdWallet's Smart Money podcast on your favorite podcast app, and stay tuned until the end of the episode to hear the Smart Money trailer. This is Death, Sex, and Money from Slate. I'm Anna Sale. AJ Daulerio's career took off after the Favre story on Deadspin. He was profiled by GQ and promoted to editor-in-chief of Gawker in 2011. He was just the man for the job, someone making new rules, or really breaking old ones, for a new era of viral internet journalism. AJ was going to get your attention, and it worked. A lot of us paid a lot of attention. And then another story about a famous sports figure landed AJ in court and bankrupted his company.
AJ Daulerio, the man behind Gawker's posting of that now infamous Hulk Hogan sex tape, taking the stand and taking some hits.
Those are your words?
Yes.
Are you laughing there?
Yep.
Lawyers for the Hulk
Hulk Hogan sued Gawker and AJ Daulerio personally after the site published a video of Hogan having sex. After years of litigation, a jury found them liable. It led to a settlement of more than $30 million and the end of that era of Gawker media. The Hogan trial ended a lot of other things for AJ Daulerio, including the flagrant drinking and drug use that characterized his time as Gawker editor.
I gotten sober in 2016, and part of getting sober through the Alcoholics Anonymous program, where I was doing the 12 steps. And in one of the steps, it's the 8th one, where you make a list of all people you had harmed, right? And a willingness to make amends to them all. And, you know, I had a sponsor at the time when I made this list of people, and there were people that, you know, I had hurt at Deadspin, who were semi-famous people and whatever. And Jenn was on that list, and they had really explained to me that it's like, you know, well, if you go reach out to these people, do you think that'll do more harm to them as opposed to good? And are you doing it for like selfish reasons to make yourself feel better? Like, is it kind of a vacant apology, right? Mm-hmm. And yeah, and she was obviously on that list. And I was just
How
like,
long was that list of people from work?
I have it somewhere. It was like a dozen, you know, easily. But, you know, I knew that she was in L.A., and I just moved to L.A. to be with my now wife. And, you know, of course, I thought about the situation of just like, you know, maybe there is something that I should kind of return to, not right away, but eventually down the road. But 2018, you know, I had already had my first child, and we were celebrating my wife's birthday, and we were talking about having a dog at some point, but she was also like, you know, I think 7 months pregnant with our second child. And it was like bringing a puppy into that sort of situation was not something that I think either one of us were really equipped to handle at that point. But
you have a 1-year-old and a 7-month, like your wife is 7 months pregnant?
Yes. And
okay.
But
there's a lot happening.
She was on Instagram and had gotten, I think it was Kat Dennings, the actress, who had like pushed out a rescue shelter photo for that, because it was 4th of July and the kill shelters are overrun at that point, that these 3 dogs needed help. And Julianne shows me the picture, and it looks exactly like the dog I had when I grew up, right?
Oh.
And
what's it look like?
It's like we had like a white lab mix, right? And his name was Polar. My dad had a little trouble with his Philly accent, so instead of Polar, it was Polar. But you know, when I saw the picture, I was just like, oh my God, it's Polar. Well, we have to get this dog, right? This is fate, right? That this dog comes into my life at this time.
AJ's wife, Julianne, emailed the rescue group and got a response that a volunteer named Jenn Sterger was assigned to bring the puppy by to get to know the family. That Jenn Sterger. She was serving on the board of a nonprofit that places shelter dogs in new homes. When he heard her name, AJ thought after years of leaving her alone, he ought to reach out.
I emailed Jenn and I was like, hey, I know my name's showing up in your inbox and this is probably startling to you. And I just tried to kind of explain my situation. Like, I have a wife now, I have a kid on the way. We just want a dog. It's like, and I'm so sorry. And I understand if you're not going to be able to give it to us. I do. But at some point I would really love to talk to you. And I'm paraphrasing here. But, and then I think she emailed back and kind of very solemn. She just like, yeah, I went on Instagram and Julianne's page and I put the two together after a while. And that was kind of it. Still not knowing full well if she was going to be the one dropping off the dog, too.
Okay, Jenn, so you just get notified when there's a family interested in meeting this dog.
Yeah, you become a lead on an animal,
Yeah.
And so you have like case files. And this was one of my case files, were these 3 puppies that were found out in the desert with their feral mom.
Oh.
And I had gone out to the desert to pick up these dogs, and the mom was too scared to be adopted, but the puppies were still young enough that they could be molded, as long as we got them into good homes that were understanding, like that's the thing with rescue dogs is you don't really know what they've been through. And I take that rescue work very seriously, and it's always been a big part of my life, working with animals. I think I like animals more than people, for good reason.
So as you're doing this work, that's like it's insulated from all this other stuff. It's your safe space. It's where you can be of service. It's where you experience really pure love. When you figured out that it was his family, what was your first set of reactions?
Look, I could have passed the dog off to one of my rescue partners. But I do think there was a part of me that was like, I had not had any contact with AJ at this point for over 8 years, And I had done a lot of work on myself. Me Too had happened. The landscape had changed. And I don't know exactly why I was like, no, I can go and I can do this for myself. I think it's because I wanted him to just see that I was a real person, And I think that that's something that for better or for worse, I often think that if I can be in a room with somebody, I can change the way they see me. I give good room. But the truth is, I think that meeting me in person is so different from the experience you have of me online.
You had never met in person during all of your correspondence.
We had never met in person, which is crazy because the other part of the story is I had never met Brett Favre.
Uh-huh.
All of the men that were the cause of my downfall, I've never actually met in person up until this point.
So then what was it like to see him in person?
I don't think we said much to each other the day I actually dropped off the dog. It was very much like business because I wanted to make sure that the dog was going to adjust well in the household, that they understood the dog had different needs than a lot of other animals would. But the dog bonded instantly with his son. Like it was so clear that this is where that dog was supposed to be because this dog was terrified of everyone and just instantly lit up with his son. And I was like, well, I can't take this dog out of here. You know what I mean? Like, and they were on board with all of the advice I was giving them in terms of what the dog would need. And they didn't seem deterred by it. And they were willing to put in the work, Yeah. And like I said, I don't think AJ and I really interacted a ton.
The dog became a part of AJ's family. They named him Nesta.
I think it was maybe a day or two later, I thanked her for Nesta, and I was just like, look, I'd still like to talk to you.
Jenn agreed to meet and catch up. They sat together at a place called House of Pies in L.A., and it was emotional.
I still wonder to this day what people thought was happening, because I'm pretty sure like I teared up a couple of times. I was like, people think I'm like he's breaking up with me or something. Like people probably had no idea what this conversation actually was.
Get this lady some pie over here, would you? She's having a tough day.
Part of it was that being with AJ brought everything back up for Jenn. But AJ also wanted to tell her he got this in a way he hadn't before, now that he'd also been at the center of a humiliating media story that felt like it crowded out everything else about him.
I was less eager to make an amends to her, but I really wanted to talk to her and tell her, I can see you now in a way that I don't think most people can. We have the shared language and the shared experience that, and I had someone who kind of helped me through my shit. And if I could be that to her in this way, then I was going to do it. Right. And the person who helped me was James Fry from, A Million Little Pieces, was the guy who essentially, has taught me about, you're able to kind of live a life that's bigger than this version of you that you think has been taken from you. And, you can just take back your story if you take back your life. And I was so eager to share that with her. I was so eager to kind of just sit down and let her know that I understood. Like I really, really got it. And I hope that she trusted me with that, right? Because it was important. And that was the most important part to me, was just look, I know how this feels now, and you can say anything you absolutely want to me and I will get it. And I will get it probably more than most people would.
So that's distinct from amends. This is saying, I've had my life blown up and felt public humiliation.
Reordered was the verb that was used to me that I always hung on to, right? Which was just I had my identity wrapped up in this one thing that I thought was this very important part of my life, which was basically just, being a provocateur. No, I mean, working at Gawker was a really important part of my life. And, obviously it had blown up spectacularly. I was also going to be kind of, connected to this iconic sports figure forever and ever in a way that I didn't necessarily like. I totally felt that I was dehumanized and I was just a plot point and a character and no longer a human. I knew all of this stuff intimately at that point. I was working through that, at the same time. I think I explained it to her. I was just look, we kind of have the same limp now, right? And I think we can connect on this, and I think that this could be a good thing.
So just to frame that time of your life, I was reading back an Esquire piece from 2017. And there's a paragraph. Not all that long ago, as the editor-in-chief of Gawker.com, Daulerio was among the most influential and feared figures in media. Now the 42-year-old is unemployed. His bank has frozen his life savings of $1,500, and a $1,200 per month one-bedroom is all he can afford. Is that a piece that you look at?
No, no. I mean, it's I always kind of talk about my recovery in kind of two ways. And the drug and alcohol part, it was always a part of my life for a long period of time, but I don't think I ever officially had a rock bottom per se. And I don't think the trial necessarily was that for me either. That Esquire story was. That Esquire story was the moment where I was frozen in a way that I couldn't understand. I couldn't understand because, I was living in Los Angeles when that profile was done. Mm-hmm. I had met Julianne. She was pregnant. I had a job. And none of that appeared in the story.
Oh.
And I remember asking the writer about it. And he was just well, that's not the story we're running. Jen's nodding her head. It's just that's it. It's just I've lost control of who I am in the rest of the world. And the rest of the world is like, you are this person and this is how you're going to be treated henceforth, right?
Yeah, and that's the very thing I've been working through since doing this Netflix documentary, because, and AJ probably has a similar experience, when something like this happens to you and you're just kind of frozen in this moment in time where that is all people will remember you for. It feels so difficult to move forward from that, because even when you move forward, everyone else drags you back into it.
Yeah, that's it.
Anytime they use that as the headline, or this is how they introduce you with like your byline. Like, as far as anybody on the internet knows, that just knows me in passing, I will always be the Brett Favre girl. And that's what I think's been the hardest part for me, is feeling like no one can understand that experience. And I feel like AJ and I are speaking the same language in this regard, where it's like, I think there's so many more people out there than we realize that feel like they are defined by this one mistake or this one thing, this one bad thing that happened to them, and they can't move forward from that. And people ask me, like, why did you forgive AJ? And I think what it comes down to is AJ is the only person in this entire story that has ever come to me and looked me in the eye and told me he was sorry. And I think that kind of apology and that kind of admittance to, like, hey, I know what I did to you. Like, that was one of the first times in my life someone had done that for me. And I mean, like, we're talking like tapping into some childhood shit. Like, that is one of the first times someone looked at me and was like, I am truly sorry for what I did to you. And that's why it feels right that only, like, I extend that grace to him, Because no one had ever done that to me. No one had ever given me that closure. Like, I still, to this day, like, it's something that I struggle with in relationships, is when people hurt me and they don't apologize and there's no mending. It's so hard to move on. And it's like, we have to give each other that. We have to give each other the capability of healing and, like, admitting when we've done something wrong.
This episode is brought to you by Discover. If you've listened to Death, Sex, and Money for a while, you know how important acceptance is when it comes to personal growth. And you know who else is big on acceptance? Discover. You see, Discover is accepted at 99% of places that take credit cards nationwide. That's a whole lot of places and a whole lot of acceptance, which is great for Discover, but even better for you. Based on the February 2024 Nielsen report, learn more at discover.com/credit card. Summer is almost here, which means it might be time for a seasonal refresh. One way I like to get ready for the warmer months is by switching to lighter textures, transitional layers, optimistic colors around the house. And what easier way to do that than with Brooklinen's premium sheets, towels, and more? I will tell you, I just changed out some towels in my bathroom. There were some that had been in rotation since I got married 10 years ago. And now we have these bright, thick white towels, and it really feels like an upgrade. I also helped my daughter pick out a new duvet cover as she's redecorated her room from a look that I'll call early elementary to now decidedly pre-tween, music posters on the wall and all. And we had a great time finding just the right crisp look for her bed that she now makes every morning. Win-win. Brooklinen's customizable bundles make it easy to refresh your bed and bathroom by putting everything you need in one place. Brooklinen's super high-quality products have been tested and awarded by experts, and their sheets are tried and true with over 100,000 five-star reviews and millions of happy customers. Shop award winners and fan faves in-store or online at brooklinen.com. That's BROOKLINEN.com. Get 15% off your first order today. It's been several years now since AJ and Jenn reconnected, and they've kept in regular touch. So, AJ, when you reached out to Jenn to do that follow-up meetup to say, like, there's things I get now that I didn't then, how would you describe, like, what kind of friendship did that start? What's your relationship now? How are you in touch, and when do you find yourselves reaching out to one another?
Yeah. I mean, I have a nice little circle of people now that have gone through some sort of public disgrace. And then anytime Brett Favre's in the news, I will reach out to her. If Hulk Hogan's in the news, she will reach out to me. And we can have this conversation, right? And just check in on each other, right? And knowing that it comes from like a good place, which is basically just like, for me, sometimes it's enough just if she says something to me, it'll take me out of spinning, right? Mm-hmm. It'll be just like, oh, right. There's someone who is hearing behind this echo, who's basically just like trying to make the echo stop for me in that moment, right?
Yeah. It's interesting. AJ equated it one day. He was like, have you ever had that experience where like someone just says one word and it makes you want to throw a table through a window? And I was like, oh yeah. I was like, I feel like Bucky Winter Soldier sometimes. And it's like a random word that like no one else will know what it is. Yeah. No one else will understand that it's a trigger. And I'll be like, before I know it, I'm off to the races. My brain is off to the races. Yeah. And it's just so nice to have someone that speaks the same language as you go, hey, put the table down, Jenn.
I validate your feeling that you want to throw the table. However.
Well, I figured when the Mississippi thing happened, I was just like, hey, saw you in the news today. How you doing?
AJ's helped me through other scenarios where I've been in relationships with people who had substance abuse issues and didn't know how to deal with it. And honestly, when I look back, saw that a lot of people I had been in relationships with had substance abuse issues. And being able to talk to somebody from the other side that could explain to me what I could do to take my power back, even in those situations where I felt helpless, was super helpful. I listened to AJ's podcast. I support him. I think the work that he's doing for that community is amazing. And I feel like he deserves to be able to evolve and move on just as much as I do, And I think that it helps sometimes to have somebody to hold that mirror up and be like, hey, you deserve to move forward. You deserve to be something more than the Gawker dick pic guy, because the work he's doing now is so much more important than that. And so much bigger than that. And honestly, probably feels what he's been called to do. I don't want to speak for him, but I just did.
I feel like what you were saying, like how he deserves to feel, affection. Like you're putting words to what it can feel like when a dog loves you without all those words. Like a dog doesn't care what history you've brought into the room if you make them feel loved and safe, like what can happen between you and an animal. Like when you think about that, this dog, this puppy who was living in the desert is now a member of AJ's family. And Jenn, you brought that puppy into AJ's family and you had this history. Like when you tell yourself this actually happened in real life, like what do you make of this story? Right? Like AJ, like do you find yourself like ascribing some kind of higher power to it? Do you find yourself just feeling in awe of what can happen that you're not in control of? Like, what do you make of it?
Yeah, I mean, I think I could tell the story like all the time, like once a week, and it still is shocking to me. And I'm waiting for people to really get what's going on. I'm just like, no, you don't understand like how much this person really despised me and really kind of held me as responsible for some of her most painful moments in her life.
The one thing that I do want to just clarify and see if you see it this way, like AJ wanted to reach out because he felt like he understood what you had gone through having with the Hulk Hogan trial and having his career blow up and it be in the press. Your story is different from his because you didn't do anything. Like
That's fair.
You got
That's very fair.
dick pics sent to you and voicemails.
Yeah.
But listen, I think that's what people don't understand is I take plenty ownership of the oversharing that caused this. I can't control what people did with that information, but I've owned all the parts of this that were me. And I feel like what's really crazy is why is the person that was technically the victim in this situation the only person that's taking accountability for their part? You know, there was never any accountability on the other side or by the industry that perpetuated it. The NFL's never apologized to me. The people that gave me bad advice have never apologized to me. Brett Favre has certainly never apologized to me. And I think if for no other reason than to have peace for yourself, like you have to forgive people for yourself. Because hanging on to it, it just hurts you.
That's Jenn Sterger and AJ Daulerio. They both live in LA, where Jenn performs stand-up and also trains other stand-ups, particularly women, in how to turn their own challenging experiences into narratives they control. Jenn is at the center of the new documentary on Netflix about Brett Favre called Untold: The Fall of Favre. AJ Daulerio runs the site The Small Bow. It's an online magazine and recovery community and podcast, and it's great. I'm subscribed, and I always open what they send me. You can find it at thesmallbow.com. Andrew Dunn produced this episode. The rest of our team includes Cameron Drews and Zoe Azoulay. Daisy Rosario is our senior supervising producer. Hillary Fry is Slate's editor-in-chief. Please support the production of our show by becoming a member of Slate Plus, our membership program. If you haven't yet, do it this week. I really want to know what Ed Zitron makes you think about and whether it changes the way you move around the internet like it did for me. You can sign up for Slate Plus and these special Slate Plus drops by going to slate.com/DSM Plus, or you can subscribe from the Death, Sex, and Money show page in Apple Podcast or Spotify. You also get access to ad-free listening as a Slate Plus member. So come on, do it. Our theme music is by the Reverend John DeLore and Steve Lewis. If you are new to our show, welcome. We're glad you're here. You can find us and follow us on Instagram at Death, Sex, Money. And I write a weekly newsletter. You can subscribe at annasale.substack.com. And you can also reach us anytime with voice memos, pep talks, questions, or critiques at our email address, deathsexmoney@slate.com. We love hearing from you. And while AJ and Jenn are still in touch regularly, given their history, it is best to be really clear when one of them is restarting the text thread.
When he texted me about this interview possibly taking place, he was like, "Hey, do you have a few moments?" And I was like, "Hey, what's up?"
Did something bad happen?
Because that's what I've come to. And he goes,
what you hear from
and I go, "Hey, is everything okay?" And he was like, "Yeah, why wouldn't it be?" And then he goes, "Oh, right." But it's just because he recognized in that moment that he's part of that trigger for me. And he immediately was like, yo, everything's fine. This is actually a good thing. But even in that moment, just because he has that shared experience, he understands what it's like to get that text, because you literally go back to the place.
I'm Anna Sale, and this is Death, Sex, and Money from Slate.
Today's episode is sponsored by NerdWallet's Smart Money podcast.
Money can be confusing. Should you invest in ETFs, get a travel rewards credit card, buy a house, or just build a really fancy pillow fort?
That could work. No shame in pillow fort game. Or you could just tune in for clear, research-backed financial insights.
I'm Sean Piles, a certified financial planner professional.
And I'm Elizabeth Ayola. We're the hosts of NerdWallet's Smart Money podcast, where you bring the money questions and we bring trustworthy information backed by NerdWallet's expert analysis, without the jargon or the sales pitch.
Our nerds do the research so you don't have to. We'll help you understand your options so you can make the best decision for your situation, from optimizing your investments and maximizing credit card rewards to making big money moves with confidence.
Plus, we keep it real. No lectures, no judgment. Just tips and tools you can use to build wealth and take control of your finances. Think of us as your financial GPS, helping you navigate your money decisions and avoid expensive wrong turns.
Whether you're planning for retirement, weighing a big purchase, or just want to make your money work harder for you, we've got insights that you can use in real life.
So, if you want practical, straightforward, and actually useful financial knowledge, plus a little bit of fun along the way, follow NerdWallet's Smart Money podcast on your favorite podcast app.
Trust us, future you will thank you.